the next thing on my list that I started and completed while I was away in England is a game called Strange Horticulture, which came out, I think I want to say about February or March, or certainly at least earlier this year, and was getting some pretty strong reviews. So I had it on the back burner that I would get to it at some point. And it came to Switch last week, which, was like, hey, it's an indie game, and the Switch kind of seemed like the ideal place to pick up and play this. It's like a puzzle narrative game where you have a plant shop and you have customers come in each day, and they're asking for a particular type of plant because they are unable to sleep at night, or they need to unlock this contraption, and conveniently enough there's a plant that will kind of pick any lock. It all takes place on a single screen. It's kind of got a bit of a Papers, Please kind of format or flow to it, where you're basically doing everything on this one screen, except for when you're changing days, and you'll go to another screen quickly and then come back. So within the screen, you've got like your kind of desk area where you have a map of the world or this land. You have your book with all of your different plants, and any kind of like notes or clues that you want to look at is on this kind of area here. Above that, you have all of your plants that you have to start with and collect over time across like two kind of levels, and by the end of it, you've got, I think there's somewhere between like 80 to 120 of plants that you can collect over the course of the game. You don't need all of them to collect the game, and the game itself has like 8 different endings, depending on certain situations and certain options that you pick during the playthrough. And then on the top right, you have your customers that you basically have like a little bell. So you hit that, and then the next customer comes in, and it'll range from they have a request for you for a specific plant they want, to the postman who'll come in to give you a letter that will be from, maybe a local telling you about, hey, there's this place that you might want to go visit. And you have, again, on your map, it's like split into kind of like, I don't know, 30 by 30, and each individual square is like a different point that you can select to go to that area. And you've got like a number of towns, you have empty spaces, and you can just start going to the different places on the map, and it might just give you like a short piece of narrative about what is it, this church, for example. Or if you're kind of lucky enough to stumble upon a specific square, you might find a new plant, or you might find whatever kind of MacGuffin to kind of progress whatever part of the story you're on. The problem with that, though, is that there's like a kind of counter that when you select an area to go to, that counter then restarts, and I think it takes like 1 minute to 2 minutes to then, select a new area to go to. So you can't just randomly go to different points of the map whenever you want. Like, you'll have to wait those couple of minutes, which is kind of frustrating in a way, but I also understand that you could just brute force, just start picking up random squares if you're not sure about where you need to go yet. I think that the overall kind of theme and the idea of the game, I think it's a really cool idea, and it has this kind of macabre Victorian Gothic feel to it, and I think that kind of tonally it gets some of that. But I think it's a game that has, it's not quite death by 1,000 cuts, but it does have some frustrating aspects to it, which I don't know if it's because it's specific to the Switch, but it's a game that feels like it was designed to be played on PC with a mouse in mind, just in terms of how like you navigate the UI. The fact that the text is quite small, especially like I was playing on handheld the whole time. If I'd had it docked on my TV, it might have been different. But
does it have
constantly?
Touch?
It does have touch. You can like move around the screen, but like with the text, it's quite small, so you have to like constantly zoom in to see the text, then zoom back out. And
is there no like accessibility options where you can make the text bigger?
There is accessibility to make the text cleaner, because like the kind of original text in the game is that sort of like fancy handwritten style. So there's a version to make the text just kind of more like basic, but there isn't a way to make the text bigger, which is because there's not a lot of like rental space on the screen. I can kind of understand why they went with the option of making you zoom in more than making the text bigger, because like one of the big issues is that when your customer comes into the shop, you have like a pretty small like square area to work with where the customer is, and like the text that they have is like in like individual text boxes, like a text message where you're getting like kind of constant text messages from them, and that text is scrolling behind them. But the problem is you only can see like one box of text at the time, so you have to like scroll back up to see like the prior text messages. And again, if you was playing this on with a mouse, you could easily just kind of click on the bar and make it scroll up. But with this, you have to like, it's one of those kind of the analog stick kind of acts as the mouse where you're using the cursor to move around the screen.
Never good.
Which is like, it's not the ideal way to do it, but the right analog stick doesn't actually do anything in the game. And I was constantly thinking like, why isn't this right analog stick just like specific to the scroll bar so you can just scroll up and down at ease? Because it doesn't do anything else, and it seems like a quick kind of like UI fix. So there's little aspects like that that are constantly annoying, and you know, because the entire game takes place on this screen, you're constantly like, you're not battling with the UI and the text and being able to read. But even so, there were some times when I was kind of having to bring the Switch up quite close to kind of read the text. So it's not ideal, and I do think like probably, I haven't checked to see, but I would imagine the PC is the way to play it. One other problem that I have with it is that the game gets quite complex later on in terms of, you know, a customer will say, hey, I want this specific type of plant, and you're using your logbook of all the plants that you've got, and you can scroll through and, you know, like it will say, hey, this plant, it'll give you like a kind of a basic description, like visual description of what the plant looks like, and it'll give you some text to the kind of describe what the plant does, how it acts, or how a little bit of how it looks. You can then pick one of the plants and you can put it under the microscope, and it will give you a little bit more detail about the plant, and you can obviously see it. And so you can at that point kind of cross-reference. But the problem is once you've got like 60 to 70 plants, that's a lot of cross-referencing that you would need to do. Now, you would say that the ideal kind of thing with this is that as you discover what a plant is, it will automatically tag it so you know exactly, you can just kind of hover over it and see, right, that's that plant. There is a way to do that, and it is available from the start, but the game doesn't tell you that, or at least I didn't see it telling me that until I was a good kind of 2/3 into the game. And then the game kind of then goes, hey, those labels over there, you can use those labels to tag all of these plants, or we can automatically do it for you if you select this function in the options menu. And it's like, well, A, why wasn't that just there automatically from the start? I don't really see the benefit of you having that as an option that I can take away the ability to have these automatically labeled. And B, why don't you fucking tell me this from the start then? Because I saw the labels and I thought that they were used to kind of tag like different parts of the map, because there's a little bit of kind of orienteering where, all right, that area over there, there's a plant that I need for that area, so I need to go back to that at some point. And I was thinking that, all right, maybe there's a way that I can use the labels to tag that here's a point of interest and I'll come back to it. But there's no way to even like draw an X on that part of the map or whatever. There's nothing like that. Or even a way for the map, for the game to tell you that, hey, you've been to this like area. It doesn't do anything with the map at all, which is kind of weird. So, you know, 2/3 of the way into the game, it finally tells you that, hey, like, if you want, we'll automatically label these plants for you once you discover them, which is really frustrating because by that point, I've got about 30 or 40 plants that I have discovered and I know what they are now, but I hadn't labeled them. So then, like, you know, on day 8 that a customer comes in and says, hey, I want this plant. I know that I have this plant, but I don't remember which one it is. And I can't be bothered to go and do all the cross-reference again. Now I have like 30, 40 more plants. And it feels like the game knows this because on the right of the screen, it has like a hint that you can select at any time. There's no penalty for selecting it. And depending on like the thing that you're trying to do, it might let you, you know, give you a hint and it'll give you like a kind of a bit of a cryptic clue. But then you can just hit the hint again and it will say, hey, it's one of these 3 plants. Just fucking go and pick one of them and you'll be fine. And it's like, that kind of feels like you've made a solution for a problem that shouldn't really exist. And there's a couple of just things like that by the end of my experience with it, I like what the game is, but the fact that this game, you know, there's 8 different endings and I don't think the story is that particularly engaging. There's no way in hell that I would want to go play this game, which is, you know, the campaign is anywhere between like 5 to 8 hours. I don't want to go do that another 7 times. So I liked aspects of Strange Horticulture. I think part of it is probably the Switch isn't the ideal way to play it. But people kind of saying that like this is like their game of the year, or this is like one of the better games of the year. I'm not seeing it, if I'm being honest.